Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, along with my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and on a weekly basis, we plan to bring you the biggest news and interviews in the world of combat sports. Ed, kind of a odd week this week. We had Lee Daly talk about his book on the history of Pride Fighting Championship on Sunday morning, and now we got a little show going here on Wednesday night. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good actually, and we'll have for our audio subscribers, we'll also have a bonus interview with MMA Pro League President Mark Taffet, who's they're launching their inaugural event on here on the East Coast in New Jersey and Atlantic City, September 15th. So anybody that subscribes to the audio version of this will get to hear that. I'll put it up on YouTube later too, but tonight it'll be up on the podcast along with this.
I'm sure you'll get to most of the information in the interview, but I believe the event streams on Flow Combat,
Yes,
and
sir.
isn't it? It's basically for the fans that are going to be hanging around for the interview. It's basically kind of following the old IFL way that they did it as far as teams, correct?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, they've got some interesting concepts. It's like they're almost remixing the idea, and we get into that. So I'll leave that for the interview. But it's definitely, I want to say it's a better idea than the folks at the IFL had, and you'll be surprised, or you probably won't be surprised to know that one of the minds behind the IFL and Mr. Taffet were friends at the time. And it's one of the many things that got him interested in MMA from the world of boxing. So it's definitely a cool interview to listen to. So folks that subscribe, if you haven't, you should, because I definitely got more interested in what they're doing in September than I already was.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing your interview from earlier today. Until then, though, we want to kind of do a little quick review over some of the violence we saw last weekend. The UFC Lincoln card pretty much paid off. Some good fights from start to finish. Hard to start a main card off any better than a perfectly timed soccer kick from Eric Anders in his victory over Tim Williams.
Yeah,
Brutal.
yeah, that was. I remember when I was watching that because it looked like Anders was losing that for a little while, if I'm remembering it right. But and the way that, I mean, because obviously his opponent's wrestling was a problem for him, so it was just weird how, I don't know if it was fatigue or whatever, because the way that kick landed, I don't know, I couldn't hear it where I was watching it, so I don't know if there's any controversy if it was considered a down opponent or what. But yeah, I mean, taking the shin straight to the face like that, it's definitely not doesn't make for a good night.
Yeah, well, I watched it. He definitely lost the first round. I mean, I never saw the cards come out, so who knows how the judges had it. Kind of by what we saw later that night, but I mean, in my opinion, he lost the first round pretty decisively. He came into the fight, I believe, a 12-1 favorite at minus 1200, which was kind of shocking. And then, but he turned the tables in the second round, and then obviously finished it with the brutal head kick. They were going by the new unified rules. So he did have his fingertips on the ground with one hand when the kick landed, but because he didn't have both hands completely on the ground, the 3 points allowed it to be legal. And it would have taken a review. I mean, it was a millisecond of time where his fingers were on the ground. So it was perfectly executed and a devastatingly violent finish. We saw another one of those not too long later in a fight between Brian Barberena and the now retired Jake Ellenberger, a longtime fighter who has wins over, you know, everybody in the sport, going back to guys like Pele Landy Johns, who I believe he
Yeah,
finished in about 8 seconds.
it was
Longtime
weird.
fighter.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but what was weird about that, I just wanted to share it because the person I was watching with, we were talking the fight game, and we were talking about Jake Ellenberg at the beginning of the fight, and I said to him, I said if he loses this one, he might want to think about hanging it up, and obviously that's what happened. So it was just crazy.
Yeah, I think he was kind of I think he'd been I figured his next loss would be the time he'd hang it up. Hasn't been going well for him a lot lately. Just glancing at his career, though, I mentioned Pele. He's got wins over Mike Pyle, wins over Jake Shields, Diego Sanchez, Jay Haran, Nate Marquardt, Josh Koscheck, Matt Brown. Been in there with Ben Sanders, Mike Perry, Jorge Masvidal, but this was his fifth fight in a row that he had lost, so it was clearly time for him to hang it up and move on. But as somebody who's watched the sport as long as I have, and I know you have, the guy left it in the cage and
Yeah,
was one of the true warriors of MMA. So wish him all the best, and if his retirement stays, I hope that's what he wants to do. And if in a couple of years he chooses to make a return in the UFC or Bellator, then be there to watch his fight again. So, um, but yeah, Bob Arena, first round, devastating knockout. Just kind of the younger, stronger fighter, and I think it was a passing to the torch there as
yeah,
far as Jake Ellenberger goes. That was followed by Courtney Casey beating Angela Hill by a split decision. I know you had mentioned you didn't catch a whole lot of that fight. I thought Angela Hill won the fight. Most of the people I saw online thought she won a close fight. Was actually a very very entertaining fight, female strawweight fight. A lot of punches thrown, a little bit of blood. So I think Angela Hill kind of took it in the chin in that one, and that kind of happened for me also in the co-main event. Michael Johnson defeated Andre Fili.
yeah.
Um, the same thing by split decision, and I thought Fili outworked him and should have got the decision as well, but that was a much closer fight and not really a robbery anyway. Just had it going the other way. Then that brings us to the much hyped main event of that night.
Oh yeah.
Justin Gaethje versus James Vick. Uh, uh,
So what's weird about that fight is just like obviously, I mean, we were both when we both did our predictions for them. Obviously, we were like we kind of sided with Vic because of the way Gaethje's fighting style and everything. But then it's like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I know I've been talking to you about that Go Face Off social challenge thing. I picked Gaethje to win on that, and obviously because my heart and having followed him from World Series of Fighting, like I said when we spoke about it, I'm just like it's hard to pick against Gaethje, even though he racked up those losses, and that win, especially winning that way, kind of reminded us, like that's one kind of like Dan Henderson. As long as he lasted in his career, it was like one of those guys you can't really count out because usually when you think it's going to be a wash is when he surprises you, and Gaethje did that on Saturday night.
yeah, he definitely did. For those that didn't see, it was a devastating, one punch knockout with a follow up punch on the ground. A minute 27 into round one.
Bad too.
Yeah, I mean, just as brutal of a punch as you'll see in this sport.
Did you see when he tried to talk to him afterwards that he thought they were still fighting and he went to take him down? I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw
off
that.
the stool, I caught a
Yeah,
minute of it, and Paul Felder, doing the play-by-play, mentioned that there was some extra stuff going on. They kind of cut the cameras to show the replay,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, um, yeah. I mean, after watching the fight, I mean, Vic came into that with one professional loss. He also lost on the Ultimate Fighter by knockout, but his only other loss was by KO punch. Um, to gosh, name slips my mind, but I have him on. Oh, Darush, Benil Darush, KO'd him. Um, Previously, and it kind of, it seems like he's kind of got the Stefan Struve disease, where he really doesn't have any idea how to use his height. He keeps his, he keeps his,
Yeah, yeah,
initially he started off well using the kicks and kind of had, I know the fight only a minute and a half, but for the first 45 seconds or so, he used some push kicks and kind of was keeping Gaethje at distance. And then, when Gaethje finally got inside, he just kind of put his chin high up in the air and made it easy for a big skyhook KO punch.
yeah.
So it kind of reminded me of Struve a little bit about, a guy who's just so much taller than everybody in his weight class.
I
Um,
mean, but I still have to say, I mean, even and Ray Sefo said it. I mean, I know Chael Sonnen interviewed Justin Gaethje years ago and said it to him. It's like his style of fighting doesn't make for a long career, but God damn it, if you don't want to watch him every time he fights, you know what I mean? I mean, he even said he's like, I don't back up, I don't run away. I mean, even when there was a point when they were fighting, and he was moved back by a teep kick, which was almost like a front snap kick or whatever, that backed Gaethje up, and he literally just it was like a zombie. Like he took the step back because of the force of the kick moved him back, and he almost stumbled, but then he just walked right back in to take more. And it's like, I mean, it's just weird because Eddie Alvarez said guys that fight him like that, it's usually bad for his opponent, and obviously he lost to Alvarez, but Alvarez, wasn't exactly without a mark on him either at the end of that fight. It's just something. It's like the guys got, what is he, like 4 bonuses now or something like that? I forget what bonus
I
he
think
keeps winning.
he's had 4 fights, but in one fight he got 2 bonuses. So he
Yeah,
actually has more bonuses than fights now. So
yeah.
he's made $250,000 in just fight bonuses in his fights. So I
And
mean the
now
guy.
now Iaquinta and who else wants to fight? Oh, Kevin Lee and Iaquinta. I think that those are the names that are being thrown around, right?
Yeah, those are kind of the only guys that are there. Everybody else is pretty much booked. Especially we were going to talk about the addition of UFC 229 of Anthony Pettis
Oh yeah.
and Tony Ferguson. So that I mean, there's just not a lot of other guys there, barring like a rematch with somebody like Eddie Alvarez or something like that. But that wouldn't be good for probably either one of their health at this point.
Yeah.
Barboza's there. Barboza would be a good fight and a
Yeah.
fun fight for
I think
Gagey.
I think I saw that thrown around too.
But that, in my opinion, that would probably be a bad fight for Barboza's health after the beatings he's took in his last 2 fights from Kevin Lee
Yeah,
and
but you never know,
Khabib.
man. We were saying the same thing about Gaethje, and look what he did. I mean, he threw that punch from hell and put James Vick right back to who the fuck is that guy status.
Correct, but you're not gonna if you fight Justin Gaethje, you're gonna either win by knockout or you're gonna get knocked out. And I don't know if it's the UFC. Guys can't really hide, but
Yeah.
the amount of punches Barboza's taken from that he took from Khabib and then followed up by Kevin Lee. I mean, he probably got hit with 700 punches combined in those 2 fights, and I don't know. It's not if I'm Barboza's family, Justin Gaethje's nobody I want to see in his next fight. You know,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
his livelihood. But what do we'll obviously talk more as it gets closer. But what's your opinion on Pettis and Ferguson?
It's weird. I haven't seen it up. Like I haven't even thought about it yet because I've seen a lot of training footage. I know Ferguson is all ready to go, but injuries linger. Things happen. I mean, he seems like a very strong-minded, like a mind over matter type of guy. And I know he's doing all the flips on the Swedish balls and all that shit that we're seeing online. But um, I didn't mean to curse. It's late for me over here in Jersey. But yeah, it's I'm gonna side with him still though. I think Ferguson. I think he's just his training methods are unique, and he's definitely got something to prove. Pettis is questionable sometimes with his fighting. I know he's been winning lately, but and he said I saw something today where he said he's more mentally stable. I don't know what that means. I know he had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life with the attacks on his vehicles and stuff that happened not that long ago. But I just think I think I that body type, that endomorph body type that Ferguson has, I just think that makes for a hard fight for anybody, whether you're coming off an injury or not. And I mean, he's not moving like he's concerned about his knee, so I guess he's ready to go. I'm gonna go with Ferguson.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got to pick Ferguson. It is a severe injury he's coming off of. Um, I know Pettis has good kicks, so I'm wondering what happens and what the reaction is if Pettis comes out throwing some kicks at the knee of Ferguson, or even one of his straight kicks to the front of the knee, which is kind of the John Jones kick. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my strategy. Whether you think it's kind of cheap or not, I would definitely attack the leg right off the bat. Now, with that said, Pettis' weakness historically has kind of been his wrestling. So I don't know if he wants to open himself too much up to a possible takedown from
Mm-hmm.
Ferguson.
And
Who,
even still, Ferguson off his back. I mean, even if Pettis tries to, enforce the ground, he's so dangerous. I mean, like I said, that body type, those lanky, wiry guys. That's why Ferguson. I forget how many choke wins he has, but that body type. it's made to submit you. It's made to constrict around you. They're like snake people. Him and John Jones. Guys that are built like that. That they can, especially with. I saw training footage of him of how he likes to set up the darts from various positions, and it's just his body type that makes it such a quick go to for him. That I honestly see him submitting Pettis that way, out of anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose if he's gonna do it, it would be something like that. Um, I don't. I don't know if I see a submission. I see if it goes to the ground, I potentially see Ferguson just kind of controlling the fight and kind of beating him up, kind of like the Barboza fight where it was a back and forth fight. But
Yeah.
I just don't know if I see the finish. Pettis has improved his submission game, and I mean, they just finished off Chiesa with a triangle at UFC 226 in
Mhm.
July. I, it's one of those fights I'd like to see it stay standing. I think if it stays standing, uh, we kind of could get an idea of. I mean, I can't remember. The last time I really remember Ferguson really standing and banging was against Lando
Yeah.
Veneta, and he had some issues in that fight. I know that
He
was
did. He did.
three
Yeah.
that was 3 years ago or so, but or maybe more. But that was when he had trouble. From then, it seems like he's just kind of taking down his guys, Kevin Lee, uh, Barboza. Everybody else he's fought just kind of mauled him and submitted him on the ground. So curious to see how that fight goes. But that's not till October 6th. We're still waiting on the main event for UFC New York 230, which is starting to get me a little bit concerned at this point. I'm not sure.
I'm the one here. Like I'm trying to figure out what are we gonna do when you get here.
Well, the card right now is loaded.
Yeah.
As
No,
far
I
as
know.
the main card, I just don't see Poirier Diaz being able to carry a main event. I mean, it's a main event style fight. Um, the UFC would have to be smoking crack, in my opinion, to put it on Diaz's shoulders with the New York Athletic Commission. I think that would be
Mm.
a potential. If you test positive for marijuana 3 days before the fight, it just too much could happen.
Yeah,
Diaz.
yeah, yeah. You make a good point. I mean, it's definitely it's like the leaves are changing colors around here. Like you guys got to make an announcement soon.
I think they're holding out. I keep hearing rumors about John Jones,
Me
which
too.
shocks me that he would get less than a 2-year suspension based off his history. But I also don't expect the UFC to hold out unless that they kind of know some inside information, obviously from USADA.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. USADA's track record over the summer, as of late, has not been that great either. So maybe they're trying to do some damage control and pull back on their, whatever they laid down when they laid down the hammer way back when. So who knows what's going on with that? But I don't know. I don't know.
I wonder if I wonder what fight they would make. Would it be John Jones versus Cormier for the heavyweight title? Would Cormier take that fight at heavyweight with the winner basically then getting Brock Lesnar in say February? Or do they do like a John Jones Gustafson interim title? Or do they just not have a title fight
It's got to be
on a pay
something
per view?
big. It's the Garden. It's got to be something big. They can't do no interim nonsense. They got to do something big. It's got to
I
be Jones Cormier or I would, like I said, I think I said this before in another episode. I wouldn't be surprised if something happened in Vegas with Khabib and McGregor that gets pushed back to the next month. I mean, you
but
never know.
but that would have to happen quickly. And
Yeah,
again, I pointed out that Pettis Ferguson is not going to. Fans are going to return their tickets hand over fist if they paid $1,000 for a ticket for McGregor and Khabib, and that fight gets canceled. In Nevada, you're allowed refunds if the main event gets canceled.
yeah, no,
So
here too.
and also in New York, tickets for New York are going to have. They just announced that next week tickets go on sale for the Denver event the following week. So we're
Mm.
2 months out. With the car, if they go ahead with Poirier Diaz as a main event, I don't think you can have a top ticket price over $400. I mean, you basically have a loaded Fox card at that point, and I don't know if that ticket price is enough to carry the rental fee for MSG. Everything I've heard is it's so expensive, so I
Yeah,
expect them to have a big main event to push that $800, $1,000 floor seat. Um, you know, someone who's going to it, and we've talked about this, with the way the card is right now, if the card held, I would be happy with honestly just having like TJ Dillashaw versus Marias. Um, as a title fight, if they're just looking for a title fight and kind of promote the card as a whole with Rockhold, Weidman, Jacare, Adesanya, Brunson. It's a pretty loaded main card right now. If you have, even if you had Rose Namajunas defending her belt, if you kind of promoted it like an old school like UFC. Gosh, I think it was like 77 or something like that, where they used to kind of promote the whole card and everybody's face was on the poster, and you just kind of promoted it as a big event as opposed to one big fight. I think they could get away with that, but I don't know. Obviously, Jones Cormier at heavyweight I find intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
And like
Yeah.
you said, you said no interim, but I could see an interim fight between Jones and Gustafson being a big enough rematch, or even if
Mm.
it's an interim tag.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we just got to wait and see, man. I mean, it's a lot to speculate, and I mean, the stuff I hear behind the scenes that the UFC is doing to try to garner interest, it's a weird time in MMA, especially for that promotion. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But you make a really good point, man. It's a little too close. It's a little too close to not have a made an announcement already.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I expect tickets to go on sale in the next. You can't. It's got to be within the next 2 weeks that they announce a ticket date. There's no way you can go 6 weeks in, and you're not going to get a huge fight. I don't think signed 6 weeks in.
Yeah.
Um, and Cormier's not dropping down to light heavyweight in time for that fight. Um, so who knows? There's just not a lot of names available right now. One of the other possible options was Ortega and Holloway, and they actually announced that for December. Early November probably would have been a little dangerous still for Max. So that extra 30 days or 35 days or whatever it is probably a good thing for him. But like you said, we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully we have news next week on our show about that fight.
Yeah.
Um, this weekend, not a ton of big event action. No Bellator, no UFC event. Tomorrow night on NBC Sports Network, and then on Professional Fighters League, Facebook fights go on live at 5:45 Eastern time, and then it goes live at 9 o'clock Eastern time on NBC Sports Network with PFL 7.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, I mean, there's fights. There's some M1 or some.
Cage Warriors is on early in the day, and then there's Saturday Nights Invicta FC 31.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Cage Warriors on Fight Pass at prelims the prelims are on Facebook, but the main card starts at 4 o'clock Eastern and on Fight Pass, and that's followed on Fight Pass at 5 o'clock or on 8 o'clock Eastern. I'm sorry, with Invicta. So got some action on Saturday. Until then, though, we'll have to wait and see what gets announced and where we're at for next week's show. But everybody stick around for Ed's interview, and I look forward to listening to it myself.
yep, it'll be once again it'll be Mark Taffet, president of the MMA Pro League. So stick around for that, and thanks for listening.
Again, everybody can follow us on @CombatHour on Twitter, myself at MMAHawk21 on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow Ed at Carbazal on Twitter. And do you want to give out your new Instagram handle?
It's Carbierzel, Carbeer, Yeah, I forgot I made that. Thanks for reminding me.
So we got an extra handle where we can be contacted with. Also, if anybody's interested in getting directly a hold of us, you can email us, coast2coastcombat@gmail.com. So hit us up if you're interested in being a guest, or if you know anybody that would be interested in being a guest on the show. Thanks everybody for listening, and stay tuned for the interview.
Cool.
All right, sir. Thanks again. I'll use this on the East Coast version of the Coast to Coast podcast. But Mark Taffet, MMA Pro League president. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about the upcoming event that you're going to have, the inaugural event in Atlantic City. I guess my first question would be, someone coming from the boxing world, what drew you to mixed martial arts?
Yeah, very interesting, because worked 32 years at HBO and 25 years at HBO Sports on the boxing matches for HBO pay-per-view. And while I was at HBO, I went to an MMA match, courtesy of a very dear friend for many years, Mark Ratner. He took me to one of his UFC matches. And I couldn't help but notice that we got there for the very first fight that opened the night. Mark said, "You got to come early and see this." And from the very first bell of the very first fight to the last bell of the final fight, the arena was packed. The fans were cheering. They were very passionate. They loved all the fighters and all the fights on the card. The action was fast-moving. You got to see a lot of different fights and fighters and styles the same night. And it was a heck of a night, I have to say. I was incredibly impressed, and I immediately became a fan. I was actually a little bit jealous of how fun an event it was in person compared to some of the fights I'd been to. So I went to a few more matches, and I found out, you know what, it wasn't a novelty. I actually enjoyed it, was becoming a fan. So when I left HBO in 2015, after 32 years, one of the things I did was hook up with an old buddy of mine, a longtime buddy, he's a young man actually, named Hani Darwish, and we spoke a few times, and we very quickly forged a bond and a partnership to pursue MMA Pro League. It's something that Hani had been looking at for many years, and he was looking for the right time, the right opportunity, and the right person to work with. And I had known him for about 10 years, and within a few meetings, we were off to the races, putting together the business plan and laying the foundation for the MMA Pro League that's going to launch September 15th.
That's pretty cool. Do you remember which event it was that you saw? The first MMA event? Do you remember who headlined?
I have to say, I really don't. It wasn't one of the big pay-per-view shows, and I wasn't very familiar with a lot of the athletes at the time. All I remember is that from the first match to the last match, the place was packed. It was the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and all the fights were of high quality. You know, it wasn't undercards leading to a main event. It was fight after fight after fight of great action, and each fighter had their own large fan bases. So there was a lot of passionate cheering every fight. It was great stuff, and it made me a fan instantly.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you're doing the event in Atlantic City. I'm sure you know that that Atlantic City and mixed martial arts have a strong history with the sport as it grew in the beginning. You know, when everything got regulated and things like that. There's events at the Tropicana, events at Borgata. I was just at the PFL events over at the Ocean Resort, and now you're bringing your league to the Hard Rock in Atlantic City. So I mean, was that on purpose?
Well, there definitely were no accidents here, but I'll tell you how we got there. I'm born, bred, and raised in New Jersey. Lived there all 61 years of my life, except for a short stint at the Wharton School when I got my MBA back in 1980 and 81. And we did a lot of fights in Atlantic City when I was at HBO, and I saw the city at its height. In fact, the very first pay-per-view fight I did at HBO pay-per-view was Holyfield versus Foreman in April of 1991 at Trump Plaza when Donald owned the hotel there. And I know it was a great sport town. When I heard about the revitalization of the city coming back, I went with a good friend of mine, Rich Rose, who used to be the president of Caesars Palace Entertainment, and the two of us have for decades been friends and business associates with Bernie Dillon, who's now the head of entertainment for the new Hard Rock. And it just took us one conversation to agree that it would be a wonderful reunion of sorts and a great addition to the Hard Rock's portfolio and the revitalization of the city. And for MMA Pro League, it's a dream come true. A brand like the Hard Rock, a great demo, great hotel, tremendous history and legacy. Back to a big city where they're going to do a lot of marketing and promotion to launch their property and establish themselves as a beachhead of Atlantic City in the U.S. entertainment landscape. And, it was just a wonderful, wonderful idea. We like the idea of, in our first phase of matches, doing all of them at the same site, because it becomes command central for MMA Pro League. It's a lot easier to build momentum and build publicity and noise emanating from a hub. I learned that in my years in boxing. And it's a lot less efficient to go city to city if you're trying to make an entree into a marketplace. So our introductory phase will be a series of matches at the beautiful new Hard Rock Hotel in Atlantic City. We will launch our first full season in the spring of 2019. And at that point, we'll have venues for every team in the cities in which they're launched. There'll be 8 teams when we launch our first full season, 4 East Division teams, 4 West Division teams. It'll be a 12 to 14-week regular season, followed by a 4 to 6-week playoff, semifinals, and finals. And but right now, for this introductory phase, the Hard Rock is a great place to be, and I hope it's someplace we can be with our New Jersey or Philadelphia team once we launch our first full season next year.
Oh, that's a great idea. I mean, speaking of the venue, so many acts and things were booked there. I think they opened earlier than announced. I forget what happened early in the summer, but I know you guys were originally booked for July. Is it because everybody's trying to book in events in there that you guys had to shuffle the date? Because I know it was originally for July, and now we're in September.
Yeah, well, there's an old phrase that someone coined that says you only get to launch once.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw a great opportunity to launch, but it really wasn't particular to us whether we went in July, August, or September. We were in the midst of negotiating some sponsor deals and a streaming deal, which we ended up doing with Flow Combat.
Yeah.
And as those deals came together, it became evident to us and the Hard Rock that the most impactful launch would be when all the puzzle pieces were together. So we all talked, and all the partners agreed that September would be a great time. The calendar was clear. Hard Rock had the date, and we all are able to put all of our resources together and put our best foot forward on September 15th. So it was actually a very easy decision for us to move back. As I said, you only get to go first once, and for us, we wanted to be the best circumstances possible for the fans, the fighters, and for our venue and all of our sponsors and partners.
Yeah, I saw the announcement. I mean, obviously it came after the original date, so obviously it was the right move to make because you have the Jab apparel and Everlast and all the other announcements that came out with the last press release I saw.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned about your relationship with Hani Darwish, the CEO, I know he's trained himself. I think he trains at Henzo's in New York. And you said you've known him for a while. So how often did MMA come up as a conversation before it became an idea to go into business together?
Well, I'll tell you, Hani used to be a boxing promoter before he worked in MMA.
Oh.
Look, he has a love of MMA. He's practiced the sport for decades. He's managed, trained, over the last few years, promoted a number of events on the East Coast. He's got a black belt in Renzo Gracie. He's incredibly passionate about the sport, and he knows all the fighters, managers, trainers, coaches, gyms. It's just second nature. He lives it and breathes it, and he loves it every second.
Yeah.
But I knew him as a boxing promoter. And I saw him a number of times at HBO. He was in our offices talking to my colleague, Lou DiBella, a number of times. He had a fighter, Omar Sheikh, in the 168-pound division. The HBO was interested at one point in time. He did some work with David Reed. But as I watched him, because he's also a fellow Jersey resident, I saw a lot of publicity and promotion for him doing MMA. And, the parallels just came together and intersected at the same time and at the right time. And literally it took us about an hour of discussion to realize quickly that it made sense for us to work together, and we were very excited. Our backgrounds and skills complement one another tremendously. We have very similar principles and values, yet we're very different people with very different skill sets and strengths, so it's really a perfect match-up for a partnership.
That's great. I mean, definitely the mutual interest, and I didn't know that about his boxing background. The one thing I wanted to ask you, obviously, I mean, you've been called a pioneer of the pay-per-view model for boxing with your time at HBO, and I know now you're doing the streaming partnership with Flow Combat. Given your experience with helping boost pay-per-view and boxing and how people watched fights back then, with the MMA Pro League, are you looking to repeat history and jump into the streaming options with your unique formula of combat?
Yeah, that's really observant and insightful of you. I loved being at HBO pay-per-view in the early days. I worked through about 4 or 5 technology generations: analog to digital cable, standard definition to high definition television, cable distribution to satellite and telco distribution, the introduction and onset of the digital age, the internet, and then social media. So technology is something I've always been a student of and always tried to stay ahead of. Clearly, in today's world, in the midst of another revolution and another change in the way people consume their video, the TV is no longer something that people watch with scheduled destination programs in mind. It's simply a video display monitor, just like all their other devices are, their phones or their computers, iPads, whatever they use.
Yeah.
And for this generation today, they want what they want, when they want it, on any device that's available to them, wherever they are at that moment. And streaming is just beginning. It's in its infancy right now. But clearly, streaming has the potential to fulfill all those needs and desires of the fans. It's no accident that UFC recently did a deal with ESPN Plus, and Bellator recently did one with DAZN to stream their products. And for us to go to Flow Combat and enter into a streaming agreement, just makes a lot of sense in today's environment.
Definitely. So I don't know if I sent you a couple of pieces I wrote already about your event coming in September. Had you heard about the International Fight League, or when you came up with the team concept, did people say this has been done before? Did you get any positive feedback, negative feedback? Did anyone say anything like that to you?
Well, very interesting story. When I worked at HBO, in 2002, we did something very historic. We worked with Showtime together and made a deal to do an event on Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson for the heavyweight championship of the world. It was the first time the two networks agreed to partner on a project. The man I did a lot of the negotiating and then implementation with was Jay Larkin. May he rest in peace. Dear, longtime friend of mine. And after he left Showtime, Jay became the head of IFL.
Oh, wow.
So I actually spoke to Jay many times about IFL. And he told me, the pluses and the minuses, the advantages and the disadvantages. And I was a beneficiary of that information when we started to talk about MMA Pro League. But I have to say, IFL had fighters fighting under the banner of a team on a given night, but that was about the only team they had, in their DNA. The fighters rarely trained together. They focused not so much on the camaraderie, because the camaraderie couldn't be built up between the fighters when they didn't, work together and train together like our fighters will be doing. It was a group of individuals who just together, wore a common jersey one night and, with the name of a city on it or a team.
Yeah.
In our case, we build our teams to be extensions of the cities and the markets in which they're launched and formed. Our athletes will be in the community. They'll be involved with schools, with gyms and training programs, with appearances, and they'll be present just like football, baseball, and basketball players are in their communities during the season and very often in the off season. It's a very important part of MMA Pro League to create that connection with the fans, and that is what makes us different from UFC and Bellator, and that's what allows us to complement those organizations rather than compete with them. We are going to establish a foundation city by city. We think it's going to be the anchor of the next great growth phase in MMA. And, there's a lot of history to support that it can work. Our athletes train together on teams as they grow up, as kids and through their adolescent even and beginning of their adult years.
Yeah.
They develop a camaraderie, and you're going to see on the night of our fights that when a fighter gets in the ring with all of his or her teammates on their shoulders, the fates and the outcomes of those teammates depending upon every match and every individual fighter in the ring, you're going to see a different level of performance. They will identify with that responsibility and internalize it, and they're not going to let their teammates down. And that's going to show in the product and the competition and the passion in the live arenas that night, and it's going to translate right through the screen into the living rooms across America when they watch us on Flow Combat. So, we're very different than the others and very different from the IFL that preceded us. The IFL also spent a lot of time focusing on what I call sensationalist items. Other people refer to it as, some of the excessive violence that happened at the time. It was a different time in MMA. The sport was presented differently.
Yeah.
Our focus is going to be on the fact that MMA athletes are some of the best, most highly trained, highly skilled, and best conditioned athletes in the world. And they train in and have expertise in multiple disciplines, unlike any other athletes in the world. MMA today helps young men and young women with self-defense, with self-worth, with anti-bullying and anti-obesity, so many fine values. And we think that this is going to be the dawn of a new era in the sport and the foundation for the next great phase of expansion. UFC and Bellator did outstanding jobs taking the sport to where it is now. And if we do our job right, everyone in the sport, including those other entities, will benefit. So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, and that's something Daniel Gracie had alluded to in one of the promo videos I saw. I think it's on the YouTube channel. I've been trying to keep up with them. You guys have been putting them out pretty quickly. But the team-based concept, the way people follow sports now, and the way MMA is kind of, there are people that are getting a little fed up with the trash talk and the social media stuff, and it might be plateauing with the casuals, but like the longtime hardcore fans are always, which is a lot of the people that use the Flow Sports app to watch fights on Flow Combat. They're looking for something different, and I think that's why when I wrote the piece that I wrote, I think when the IFL came out, it was too soon for the sport, but it seems like you guys had enough conversations about it and are coming at it a different way at the right time, when enough people are interested in MMA, and it looks like you guys are looking to grab the people that are looking for something new before they get bored again. Does that sound right to you?
It's as though you sat with us in the meetings in the boardrooms. Your thoughts and your conclusions are exactly the thoughts and conclusions that Hani and I share, and are the foundation of our business plan and our hopes and dreams for MMA Pro League. Absolutely. We think that, as I said, the sport has gone very, very deep down the silo of fans in certain demographics, but like a letter T, we're now going to make the crossbar. And, I go to my partner's gym. Hani's got a gym. There's a few hundred kids there, as many girls as boys in those classes, and there's soccer moms out in their SUVs picking up the young boys and girls on weeknights after they do their training.
Yeah.
There's something there. There's no doubt about it. It's the right sport at the right time, the right demographics, the right technology, and we're going to listen to the fans and give them what they want and present the sport in a way that everyone will be proud of. And look, we're not going to run after the stars of UFC and Bellator. They've got an incredible machine, both those organizations, presenting superstars in big pay-per-view matches and other formats. We are going to create that foundation from the ground up. It's a very different concept, and there's room for both, and both will complement each other. So we think it's just going to be beneficial for the athletes, the fans, and everyone else involved in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something. That's one thing that that in the piece that I wrote that a lot of people forget from the days of the IFL. Like guys like Roy Nelson fought there. There's a lot of other big names that fought there, and Chris Horodecki and had greater careers after even when the IFL was gone. So you're definitely giving a lot of young fighters a great opportunity. And one thing about you guys being on Flow Combat is in their editorial side where they do a lot of the news, they do features on prospects of young guys coming up. So it's definitely something that's good for MMA's future. And the one thing I wanted to ask you though, because I know you're releasing the fighter profiles. I saw the Zed Montanez, I saw the Daniel Gracie piece, and Hani Darwish is the first video. Are there any females on any of the teams in the first event? And if not, are there any coming in the future?
When we launch our first full season next year, there'll be 6 weight classes per team, 5 male and 1 female, and that is, we are committed to having that be an integral part of our format. I know I manage Clarissa Shields, the U.S. 2-time gold medal winner, best female boxer in the world, and we had her training with Chris Cyborg a number of months ago because those are two of the baddest ladies on the planet. Yeah, it is now time for women's power and women's empowerment, and the women will be a part of MMA Pro League. In this first introductory series, in this particular match, we have a goal of having at least one women's fight on the card. We haven't finalized the match yet. We're still working on it. We hope that we'll be able to bring it there, but regardless, our commitment is unwavering, and we will have women leading MMA Pro League, not just participating in it. And like happened in UFC, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the women became the biggest stars out there because it's their time to shine.
Absolutely. And it's definitely a sport where it seems women succeed way faster than in boxing. And I know you coming from boxing, you've probably noticed that too. And there's a lot of female boxers that crossed over to MMA that mentioned that as well, like Amanda Serrano, Heather Hardy, Anna Hulatan. They've all talked about how they never get the exposure they would have liked in boxing, and when they came new to MMA, they were already main card featured on a broadcast. So it's definitely something.
Part of that is the fact that MMA appeals to a younger demographic, and the younger demographic just has a different point of view, much more open-minded about everything in life and society and politics and in sport. And it is exactly the right time for women to step forward and demand equality in sports. Clarissa's doing it in boxing. Chris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes and the women that preceded them, Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm, they did it and demanded it and commanded it in MMA, and there'll be many, many more women, and we'll be very proud to showcase them and have them lead the way in MMA Pro League when we launch our first full season.
That's great. So where can we see, like when we have the full bout listing and everything, where can folks look it up to see who's fighting who and then who's on the teams?
We have a very active website, MMA Pro League, no spaces, hyphens, MMAProLeague.com. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram platforms on social media, all at MMA Pro League or hashtag MMA Pro League. Fans can find, we have a YouTube channel. Fans can go on YouTube and find the MMA Pro League YouTube channel where all of our wonderful videos can be seen. We're very proud. We have 2 content series being developed right now and will be made available every day for the 21 days leading into the fight. There'll be new content on all of our platforms and our YouTube channel.
Oh, great.
We have a 6-episode series called Inside MMA Pro League, which features the making of the league, a lot of Hani's thoughts and ideas about why the league made sense and came to fruition at this point in time, and how his dream is coming true, and a lot of conversation with the fighters and the coaches about the team concept. We also have a series of fighter profiles. We'll have 6 to 8 of those. You mentioned a few of them. Zed Montanez, Cody Heyer, a few others will be seen in the very near future. They're great pieces is done by a former colleague of mine that I worked with at HBO, named Greg Backer. His company, Foglight TV. They do a great job, and they're producing wonderful content for us. We have some of the best photographers, Ed Mulholland, Stephanie Trapp, Matt Heasley. They've done great photo shoots with our teams that are going to create content that fans are going to love, primarily for Instagram, but also on our other platforms. And it's all about content today. Today, you bring it to the fans, you give it to them where they can find it easily, and they will connect to the athletes through that content. So we're very excited.
Yeah, and it's great for you to get immediate feedback too on what you guys are doing. So, well, one final question before I let you go. You said you're from New Jersey, so are you going to be able to be an objective president when Team Pennsylvania and Team New Jersey face each other, or are you already on Team New Jersey?
You know what? I have 2 kids. I have 3 grandkids. I learned life's lessons about you love them all and you love them all the same. And I don't think it'll be any different with the teams. I'll definitely be objective. How do you not love Daniel Gracie, his passion, his commitment to the sport, and the athletes on his team who I've gotten to know personally? There's no way that I could, look at Dan Miller's team and the boys, men and women from New Jersey, and favor them in any way. Let me tell you this: Dan Miller and Daniel Gracie, they are kings in the cage and out of the cage. We're proud to have men like that coaching our teams. They're not just coaches and former practitioners of the sport. They are mentors. Athletes want to be in the presence of those guys. They set the right stage, and they look out for the interests of the men and women who train with them. And that's exactly the kind of figures we want coaching our teams in MMA Pro League. We're proud to have Dan Miller. We're proud to have Daniel Gracie. And may the best team win.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. It was very informative for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you. Hopefully we'll see you in Atlantic City.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hey, y'all, East Coast Ed here. If you liked what you just heard, please hit the listener support button. Help support the podcast so we can keep things coming to you. We will shout you out in the show, depending on how much you donate or subscribe to support to. Shout out, swag, or have you on to do a fighter breakdown. But we are growing, so please subscribe, listen, support, whatever you feel like doing. As long as you're with us, we are with you.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.